SML live show, name to be announced. This is QB Stud with my co-host. I got the Meats. How you doing today, Meats?
What's going on, QB? Doing good. Just had a nice comeback against the Bengals, so we're rolling with it.
Awesome. So the point of today's show is we're still going to hit on a few topics as far as what's going on around the league, but I really want to take a deep dive and take our viewers in to see exactly what's happening with the dreaded spreadsheet that we always reference in this show. How much about this sheet do you know, just from me posting it in GroupMe or on Twitter or whatever it is?
I mean, more than the average guy. I mean, I'm kind of a statistician myself. So, I know kind of enough how it works, but why don't you go ahead and explain it a little bit more for the guys that maybe don't pay too much attention to it?
Sure. So what we're going to do is I'm literally going to walk through updating some of these things. And before Mike, never mind. Mike actually just posted in the chat, this is not a sorted by rank sheet. It is alphabetical right now because this is going to be what I've turned into the reference sheet. So basically the way that this stuff all works is everything references itself, and then I can come down here based on the week, and what we're going to do is we're going to build this sheet together so you can see exactly what happens with the sheet itself and what comes out of it. So all this is alphabetical, and it's not yet updated through week 7. And yeah, the Panthers are 21st alphabetically. So essentially, excuse me, the way that the projection works is to use really mathy terms, it goes off of the Pythagorean theorem. And so what that comes down to is you have these two. What's that?
So I'm not a mathematician. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, right?
Essentially, but not exactly. So what we have is we have two components, and normally they're both squared, and you put them together. However, in order to use a best fit model, it's actually found that the exponent should be 2.67 instead of 2. I'm not going to sit here and explain exactly why to everyone because they'd all fall asleep, but that's essentially what's happening here, is we have points for over points for plus points allowed, and they're all raised to the 2.67. So point differential is the biggest component, the biggest driver in this projected system, which makes sense, right? If you want to win games, you got to score more points than you're giving up. So that's really what's happening behind the scenes. And so the way that it works is I've broken it down by each week, and we go through and we have the points scored, the opponent, how much they allowed, and then what that win was worth. So there's actually two ways we can do it. We can have it to where it's projected over the course of the entire season, and a new one that I'm trying out is where each game is worth the same amount, and it's all put together. For example, Week 6 was the last completed. If we go by Week 6, this is really small for them, isn't it? If we go by Week 6, the Eagles are by far and away the best team, and part of the reason why is because they have a shutout victory, and they have a victory where they basically gave up only 3 points. So that's almost like having nothing but points that get added on to other wins. So you see here their projected win total is 14, but that's really high. If we take it to where we normalize those games, then they're only projected to get 12, which is probably a little bit more reasonable. So this is a new projection that, again, I'm not going to spend too much detail explaining, but it's really going to help curb the high end and the low end. And Mike, this is where you can complain about where the Panthers are through Week 6. You were at 10 here based off of projected. So there you go. So you were in a good spot.
All right, so let me see if I understand this so that, people who are maybe not as in-depth at stats as both of us are. So what this is, to my understanding, is kind of like an average of just this week or the past few weeks.
So the projected is based off of the entire season. What's called unit projection is where it's built off of each individual game by itself, put together. So it's still the course of the whole season, but each game has its own weight.
Okay, I don't know how that's different than the first time.
So the reason, it's because it's normalized. So for example, the Browns-Cardinals game from week 3, 2, 4. Browns-Cardinals game from week 4. It was a 6-3 game, right?
Yes.
So that 6-3 game counts as a full game. I mean, that's still a full win and a full loss, right?
Yes, sir.
But if you compare that 6-3 game to a game that was 24-21, that 6-3 game is worth only 1/3 of what the 24-21 game is. Does that make sense? Actually, less than that, but that's neither here nor there. So by normalizing it and making each game worth the same, it's going to curb the high ends and the low ends.
Okay, got you. So, all right, Prime, let me explain this for you a little bit better here in layman's terms. Not that QB did a bad job, but in layman's terms, what it is every game is worth the same amount. So like QB just said, 24-21, it's really close together. But it's a lot more points than that 6-3, but it's still a 3-point win. So what this new thing is going to do is equalize those, is what you're saying.
All right, so yeah, and I don't want to dive in too much on it. That's not what the point of the show today is. But yeah, just to show exactly what it looks like. So here what we would do is I would go to the Daddy Leagues page, and I would look for the games. So the Eagles played the Rams, and they lost 15-16. So what I would do is I would come in here and put their opponent. I would say that they scored 15, and they allowed 16. So that's going to give them a certain projection based off of their performance only from this game, and basically how they did. So a 50-50 would be a tie, right? And yeah, I'm really red because I tried to do lighting, and it's not really working on my green screen, and it's really flushing out the colors on stream. So that's wonderful. And what I've also done is created a new metric that I'm calling adjusted performance value. And so what adjusted performance value does is it's a lot simpler than you'd think. It gives you a weighted point system based off of the quality of the game that you played. Not necessarily on a quality win, but the quality of the game that you played. So for example, Jaguars-Browns in week 6. That was a 40-8 victory against a team that is projected to go, where are the Browns at 9? Against a team that's projected to go 10-6. That's a super solid win. So he got 180 points out of that win. If you have, let's see, what was another big win? Eagles-Giants. So he won 34-3, which is arguably a better win, right?
Yes.
However, because the Giants are only projected to have less than 4 wins, even though it was a better win, he gets almost no points compared to it because it's a team he should have beaten. So you can see here the win percentage here. If Eagles plays like that the rest of the season, he's going to go undefeated. If Jaguars plays like that the rest of the season, he's doing really well, but maybe not undefeated. However, the Jaguars' performance was obviously more impressive because Woods is a great player, and he still beat him 40-8.
Okay, so yeah, this is what the problem with the sheet was last season. It was no strength of schedule. That was what Prime was complaining about last season.
Yep.
So what you're saying is this APV is going to bring in, it's basically a strength of schedule or strength of victory.
Yes. And so what it works is it multiplies the projected win performance by the projected win total for the season of the opponent. And so it gets you pretty little points to where you can go off of that. And so if I were to rank the entire league by that here, and I actually changed it to adjusted performance per game because not everyone's played the same amount of games. This is what that looks like. And that's just too big to fit on one screen. So we see here that Oshie has performed by far and away the best in the league, which that's something that wouldn't surprise anyone. Is that fair to say?
No, yeah, he's consistently one of the best, if not the best, regular season performer in the league.
Yeah, so an average team would get around 50 to 55 APPG. And Oshie has double that. Now, something that may surprise you is through week 6, Royce was 2-3. However, he has the second highest. And so that's something that I want to kind of break down. Actually, we're going to break that down later because that's something we're going to talk about is going to be surprise teams and teams that are playing better than they look. So that's something that may surprise people, though, is even though he was 2-3 through week 6, he's still projected to get 10 wins, and he's been the second most impressive, if you will.
Wood says he can't see the chart. I don't know why. You're not watching stream, I guess.
I was going to say, it's on the stream, right?
Yeah, it definitely is.
All right. So what that is then is it gives us a performance evaluation, again, an adjusted performance value to where it works off of the quality of your opponent and the quality of your win, not just one or the other.
Okay, so let's transition a little bit, or as Prime likes to say, let's switch some gears. Grams is not a fan of this. He, from what I understand, took offense that he was not regarded very highly by this metric.
Grams is 8th. His primary problem was that Cardinals was above him, and he beat Cardinals pretty handily.
Okay, so, yeah, Excel is not going to know who beat who. We don't have that kind of thing yet. Maybe in the future, but that sounds like something that's going to be more complicated to do. I mean, this is already complicated. It's beyond me, and I do a lot of this stuff for a living.
So I'm happy to defend it and explain exactly why. I can actually walk through it too. So week 1, Cardinals played Packers, which was a meh victory because, let's be honest, Lawyer's not living up to... he lost to Packers, that's right. So he got smoked by Packers. So it was a very poor performance, and Lawyer hasn't been doing great. So he only got 2.75 points for that. Meanwhile, Grams got 89, which again, 100 is like spectacular. So that was a great win week 1. However, he starts to separate in week 2. So we see here where Cardinals smoked the Rams, who has been doing very solidly, actually. I think he has... I can actually look that up. He's 3-3. So he's a solid team, and he got beat pretty badly in this game. Whereas the Cowboys won handily, but it was against a weaker Giants team. Week 3, the Cardinals beat the Steelers, who has been doing really well. So we've got the newcomer up Vikes fan in for the Steelers, and he's holding his own. He beat Prime the week prior to this, and so that's a quality win. Meanwhile, the Cowboys played, the 49ers, and we love him, but Spooky hasn't been playing super well. So that's a very low value win.
So for those at home, what would you say an average win if you beat a guy that was 8-8? Or let's say 2 8-8 teams go together, and one of them beats the other. How many points are they going to get?
So right now, the average APPG is 59. I would put an average performance around 55.
Okay. So above 55 is more of a better win,
yes.
And below 55 is, you should have beat them.
Right, because, you look at it and you have, like this game where you have Grams against Spooky. Grams should have won that game handily. He did, but it wasn't all that impressive, is basically what this metric is getting at.
Gotcha.
And then losing to the Bills obviously didn't help him. And then meanwhile, you have this game where Cardinals beat Woods. And again, Woods has been a really solid team. He doubled his point total, so it's going to come off as a massive victory.
Okay, so yeah, again, this is just maybe not a foolproof way, but a pretty good way of putting that strength of schedule into those wins expected, which again was the problem the sheet may have had last season.
Correct.
I think going forward, Prime's still going to complain that there's no Prime effect on it, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's just one of those things that's unintangible, right? Intangible. So what I plan on this metric being is a supplement to the projected value. The projected over the course of a season is still going to be the go-to metric in my opinion, but you can put the APPG, as you're making fun of me in chat, right next to it and try to help differentiate between two similarly projected teams.
And you got to spice it up a little bit.
It's all good. I think another thing that it does is, for example, at this point, if we go off of projected, the Patriots were the second, I think, team projected-wise, but they're only 10th as far as APPG. So what that's saying is, even though I was 5-1 at that point, I was still only the 10th most impressive team, which to me isn't that far off. I wasn't super impressive in my performances, but that being said, still 5-1, so you're fairly high, just not as high as that 5-1 record would indicate.
Okay, so we're at about 18 minutes. So why don't we transition into the who's doing better than we think, who's doing worse than their record, and let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to give you the floor first since I've talked plenty. So I'll let you start, and then after you give it, I'll give my thoughts, and then we can switch over to me.
Okay, yeah. First and foremost, I see the Colts at 11 at 2-3. This is for week 6.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually lost that next game too to the Jets. But at 11 after 5 weeks or after 5 games, I think that's about right, because Prime is that guy that you think is going to be in that top 5 almost very consistently, and he's struggled to start this season. So right around 11 is about where I would put Prime on anything. So if this is any indication, I think that metric does a very good job of that.
I agree. He's a team that obviously he's dangerous. He's near that top 10, how he's playing even right now. But that being said, he isn't playing like an elite player at this moment. I think you've got that one nailed down perfectly.
And just for comparison's sake, terrible two-step in the Rams, also 2-3 after 5 games. Down there at 25th. And two-step is a guy that I don't know if he's won 9 games yet this cycle. I think he was 8-8 a few times, 6-10 and worse every other season. So I think it does a pretty good job putting players about where they should be. Now, if Prime was undefeated, obviously he'd probably be number 1. But
right. Well, and that's where you're looking at Oshie, right? I mean, Oshie is pretty well separated from most of the pack, although he does have Royce kind of there chomping at the bit. But this is something that's only going to get better as the season goes over, because if you've had a strong schedule, your APPG is naturally going to be higher than someone with a weaker schedule.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's just go through the list, and let's find out teams that are ranked higher than they should be or ranked lower than they should be. 27th, I see the Lions. You know me, I'm a big PJ fan. I think he's a good player. Sitting at 2-3 and 27th after week 6. Keep in mind, we are in week 8 now, so this is not entirely updated completely. Right. Yeah, I think the Lions are a better player than that 27th. I don't think some of the guys above him are better players. And that doesn't necessarily, or this chart doesn't necessarily indicate which player is better, just so much as how they've been playing this season.
Yeah, it's how impressive have they been thus far.
Now I see the Eagles 4-1 at 17th.
100. So look at the point differential. That's 100% on the strength of schedule. Their beginning of the season was super, super light. And if I recall correctly, didn't they lose like the next week or two after that too?
Yeah, I can check right now. I have the game pulled up. They may have.
So that's something that this metric would be able to point to, because it's saying, look, I mean, Gov blew through those teams. You can see his point differential. I mean, he had big, big victories sitting at 4-1 through week 6. But that being said, he beat up on a lot of teams that aren't exactly in the upper tier. So he's had an average beginning of the season, is all this is saying.
Yeah, the Eagles are 4-2 now, so they did lose their next game after this was updated.
Yeah.
Let's go look at the Eagles' schedule for some more, some more context for that.
Absolutely. So week 1, the Eagles were up against the Saints. They shut them out. I love ZZ, but I'm going to let that stand on its own. Week 2, they were up against KJ. Again, I love KJ. I'm going to let that speak for itself. Week 3, up against Conk, but he lost. So that's where, against his first quality opponent, he took a loss. Now, it was a close loss, but it was still a loss, and that was, again, his first test of the season. Week 4, he had a bye. Week 5, up against the Redskins, which, don't get me wrong, Gamepad was a really good player, but his performance through that week had been very, very poor. So because of that, it's going to reflect poorly in this metric, and he still only won by 5. So that's, again, another one that's going to hit him pretty hard. And then week 6, he was up against the Giants, and although he won it pretty aggressively, the Giants are another one of those teams that are not up at the upper tier.
And then week 7, so that's not reflected in this chart. Sorry, they lost to the Rams 15-16. That's going to get the Rams quite a few points, but it's not going to do very much for the Eagles. So really what we're looking at here is Gov really limping through the regular season again. He's beating the crap out of teams he should beat the crap out of. But teams that are maybe borderline too good, like terrible two-step in the Rams, like Conk and the Bills, have put up a good fight against him. I mean, even he beat Gamepad by 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, okay, I'll agree with 17th there.
Yeah, he was average. I mean, he blew out teams he should have blown out. He lost against a good team, which you can't over-penalize that. And then he barely beat a team that had been performing poorly. You see, the estimated wins for the Redskins was less than 6, just because he wasn't playing up to his normal level at that point in the season.
So, this is a point where it clicked for me. This is really more of an extreme power rankings, right?
Yes.
Because the Jets at 2 and 3, in any normal power rankings, they'd not be that high. But because of their good wins, they're that high.
And because they played really good teams and only barely lost. It's not just about who you beat, it's about how you lose and who you lose to also. That's a big piece of the puzzle. He barely lost to you. He barely lost, week 1, he lost to the Cowboys by 1 point. Week 2, he destroyed Conk. Week 3, he barely lost to you. Week 4, he beat the Patriots team that was doing well, and then he lost to the Chiefs. And yeah, we lost. All right, I'm back.
Something I wanted to point out on the wins projected or wins expected. We got the Bills at number 4. I know this is sorted by remind me, APV, right?
APPG, because it's per game, but yes, APV is big value.
Right. Okay. So we got Bills at 4, 4-1. Wins expected is only 9, and he already has 4. And now again, this doesn't look at his future schedule, but let's talk about that because that seems awfully low for a team that's 4-1.
The whole reason is he has a point differential of 8. He's only scored 8 more points that he's given up. If you look at his unit projection, it's actually 10. So it's even higher because his big issue was against the Jets in week 2 where he lost 42-7. So that's going to be a huge knock on him. And even though he beat the Raiders fairly well, he barely beat Gov. And then I think he beat Grams, had a bye week. And then
he beat the Dolphins by 5.
Only by 5, right? So
yeah.
Honestly, what this comes down to is that Royce just shellacked him in week 2. If that didn't happen, he would be much higher up this list. And that's where I think this metric comes in heavy because one game shouldn't dictate the entire outlook on a team.
And since this chart, again, this is week 6 if you're just tuning in, Conk has played 2 more games. He beat the Bengals by 1 point, 38-7. So that's not going to do much for him, especially with the Bengals being down there at 29 in week 6. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's probably going to hurt him quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And then today, sorry to bring up a sore subject, he 45-21 over the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that win will help him.
That's a better win.
Yeah, that win will help him more than the Bengals win would hurt him.
Yeah, I know Prime wanted me to talk about that game. So, real quick, let's take a sidebar here. What happened? What happened in that game?
I challenge you to watch the first 2 quarters of that game and not laugh. That's how I'm going to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, I have to agree. And I think Rowan, if you're watching, he'll agree too. I don't know what it is about the game right now, but it is not good. It's been really bad the last week or 2, IRL. So I don't know what's going on with the game, Madden. Fix your stuff. Let's all right, back to your regular scheduled program.
Yeah, so as far as just me real quick, a team that I think is doing really well that doesn't look like it, I mean, you see it on the sheet, but I would agree with that personally, partly because they beat me, is Royce. Even though he had a 2-3 record coming through to week 6, and he was actually coming off of a pretty substantial loss to the Chiefs. I still think he's been playing extremely solidly, and he looks like he's going to be a juggernaut moving forward this season. As far as a team that isn't as good as they look, I actually had Future on that one. Even though he had a winning record, and I think he won big against Spooky Week 7, he had a negative point differential even at being 3-2. He beat the teams that he should have beaten, but he really lost to the teams that were tougher. And that's Future is sometimes called the regular season warrior, right? That's someone that I expect to do much, much better than this, and I just haven't seen it from him.
Yeah, so something I did yesterday and into today, I am starting a spreadsheet with all-time wins. I'm going to keep track of all-time wins. I'll update it every offseason for current and or past owners who played a lot of games for us. So far this cycle, and this is only going to be for this cycle because, Madden's horrible and Daddy Leagues is not good. The best regular season record in the league belongs to Future and the Seahawks, 56-7-1. Now, this does not include this current season. This is up to the end of season 28. 56-7-1. That's an 88 win percentage, which is 3 points higher than the next guy, who's Oshie and the Bears at 55-9. He's first in wins and 0-4, I believe. I have to check on that season one. 0-4 in the playoffs. Has not won a game in the playoffs. So that regular season warrior nickname is not bad.
Yeah, and so it's just, even then though, he hasn't been performing extremely well in this regular season. I really expect him to pick it up. It's just not there right now.
Yeah, I think he'll pick it up. I don't know. It's going to depend on the draw. I think he's capable of winning in the playoffs. He's just likely been unlucky. I know he's played Gov a few times, and you know how he is in the playoffs. So, I don't expect Future to lose very many more regular season games. We'll see what he does in the playoffs this year.
Absolutely. So that's really what we wanted to look at. Basically, wanted to introduce a new metric, kind of talk about the unit projection is just another little side project that I'm running. Looking forward to what you guys have to say about it. If you think that your team is getting hosed by it, if you think that your team, it reflects great on you, I'd love to hear any feedback. Please let us know what you think about the show, and Meets, I'll let you sign us off.
Yeah, so like QB said, let us know. We're open to anything. If you have an idea for a name, we'd love to hear it because we've thrown around a few things, but we have not settled on anything yet. Hopefully we'll have one by next week. But all right, I have been Meets. He has been QB Stud, and this has been a, for now, untitled live podcast. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks, guys.